The worst local rumour was that they found her teeth in the tumble dryer. But to this day, most of the earthly remains of Margaret Gardiner, mother and legal secretary, 55, have never been found. It was a blustery Monday, 4th of October, when Margaret left the office at lunchtime to, as a colleague put it, put John out of the house they shared in Helensburgh, Scotland. Work was stressful, and her home life even more so. The previous evening, she'd opened a letter which revealed that John had forged her signature on a £55,000 loan. Days later, her brother and sister would issue an urgent appeal for help to find their beloved Margaret, while the Gardiners' 2 children would reveal concerns that their mother had suffered a nervous breakdown. Chief Inspector Andy MacDonald, leader of the initial inquiry, said it is totally out of character for her to go away without contacting her family, and they and her friends are anxious for her to let them know she is safe and well. As a former submariner and officer of the Royal Navy based in nearby Faslane, John Gardiner, 58 years old, had scraped by as a kitchen salesman after running up thousands of pounds worth of debt on credit cards. He badgered a workmate of his to falsely identify as his wife when applying for the loan. Later, this woman told the papers that she felt manipulated by him. He told police Margaret had left. On Monday, after the lunchtime confrontation during which they discussed separating and he told her that he'd found a flat, he had driven his wife into Glasgow and left her on Robertson Street near Central Station. She told him she was going to visit the children, Fiona, 27, and Graham, 24, who both live in England. But she'd never bought a ticket or informed them of the visit. 5 days later, when she failed to return or contact home, John reported her missing. Detectives scoured hours of CCTV footage taken across Glasgow and issued appeals to the public to look out for a 5'4" woman with dark curly hair. Margaret's sister tried to comfort their elderly parents. Fiona flew up from London to be with her dad, as John had become uncomfortable in the house and ill with worry and was living with his sister. Soon after, forensic investigators uncovered damning evidence of foul play at what the small-town rumour mill was quick to name Helensburgh's House of Horror. The search was intensive. Bone fragments from the inside of the skull were discovered on one of John's dirty shirts in the washing machine. Evidence of blood and the fragment of a tooth in the bath waste pipe were also uncovered. Findings cruelly twisted in the rumour mill to become they found her teeth in the tumble dryer. Police hauled John in for further questioning, but he refused to make a statement unless it was to their daughter Fiona, who duly flew up from London. Under interview conditions, Fiona begged him to talk, and what her father had to say was horrific. Fiona, is Mum dead? John, I've told the police. Fiona, are you going to tell me? John, yes, she's dead. I didn't murder her, I killed her. It was an accident. Fiona, where is she? John, in the River Leven. Fiona, where? John, I've told the police. Fiona, I don't care what you've told the police. Tell me. John, the bridge going out from the roundabout, the first bridge. Fiona, when? John, about 2 o'clock in the morning, the Tuesday morning. Fiona, what happened? John, Mum came home at lunchtime and we had a blazing row. She was making a sandwich and had a knife in her hand. She went for me. I thought she still had a knife. Fiona, what happened after that? John, I turned her and pushed her and she fell down the kitchen steps. Fiona, how do you know she was dead? John, she was dead. Fiona, you tell the police everything and you're going to tell them the whole truth and there is going to be no more lies. Fiona then left quickly and upset. The previous transcript was taken from the police interview. A trial was arranged as the River Leven was dredged and divers examined the grimy floor for any sign of human remains, but none were found. Later, Dr. Michael Fennessy, an expert in coastal oceanography, told the High Court in Paisley that if Mr. Gardiner was telling the truth, then Margaret's body was now probably hidden in marshland, and chances it had been washed out into the Clyde were very slight due to weak seaward currents and numerous inlets which could have trapped a floating object. Dr. Fennessy said that Mrs. Gardiner's body would almost certainly be located in the estuarine marshes of the lower Leven, difficult terrain which was even harder to search than thick woodland. Meanwhile, Dr. Marjorie Black told the court in Paisley that her examination of the piece of bone found in the washing machine indicated an injury of serious force by either crushing or multiple blows, most often seen in cases of road traffic accidents, falls from a height, being struck by a train, or attempts at dismembering the body. When Dr. Black was asked whether Mrs. Gardiner's injury could have been sustained in such a way, she said it would have to be a unique, extraordinary collection of circumstances. In Helensburgh, rumours that John was lying about Margaret's whereabouts began to surface as the weeks and months went by, without a body being recovered. Helensburgh Reservoir was suggested as a possible dump site, but hopes were dashed when humans' remains found at nearby Loch Lomond were proved not to belong to Margaret. John was sentenced to 6 years in jail for culpable homicide and a further 6 years for hiding Margaret's body. An appeal reduced that sentence to just 9 years before his early release in 2011. Fiona and Graham sued their father for personal damages after the tragedy and won £25,000 each. John attempted to sell the house that was the scene of his wife's murder for its face value at nearly £250,000. It sold instead to his children for £33,000, less than the amount the court ordered him to pay. In 2012, John Gardiner, a free man, married his second wife in Blackpool. The case was covered in a 2018 episode of the podcast Twisted Britain. To this day, Margaret's body has never been found. Their house on Sinclair Street has new owners, its past largely forgotten. Beyond its front hedge lies a yellow-lined cycle path, which was still a building site under construction back in 2004. And it's there, underneath the rubble and concrete, the locals who remember the last tragic rumour are convinced the body of Margaret Gardiner actually lies, waiting for justice. One of the last things Margaret said to her colleagues at work was, "If I ever go missing, dig up the back garden, and you'll find me there."